So great Wednesday, Ryan. How you doing today?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me, King.
Thank you for being here. And this is the King Connections podcast. I'm your host, King. And again, the purpose of today's podcast is to illustrate the success of how small micro businesses are implementing their conscious business practices. And so I bring a different conscious leader on each podcast to really learn how they're implementing the four principles of conscious capitalism. And then more importantly, how they're living their lives according to being a conscious leader. So, with that being said, my first question I always like to begin with, Ryan, is what do you see as your purpose in life?
What a great question. I think it really comes down to, I can't affect anything outside of me until I take control and affect the things inside of me first. And so I would answer that question by growing and expanding my own consciousness in order that I may grow and expand those around me. And, it really kind of goes along with that old saying, a rising tide raises all ships. And it needs to start with me. And I think it's that radical self-responsibility that we all need to adopt. I think that there's a lot of folks that are very passionate about growth and change, and they look outside of themselves all too often for that very effect. And I think if you start with yourself, you have a solid foundation from which to help others continue to grow and build. It kind of goes along with some other sayings that you might have heard is, how dare you try to take a speck out of another person's eye when in fact there's a log in your own eye. So start with yourself and build out from that purpose.
Absolutely. I think that's a great mentality to have and a great process as well. My next question would be, what is the mission of your company, HR Revolution?
Yeah, so HR Evolution is a company that's been in existence for about 6 years now. And I developed and launched this business with the idea that I know that there must be a better way. There's a better way that more aligns with who we are as people in terms of how we carry out business. And so, with that said, my real mission and goal of HR Evolution is to equip individuals and organizations with the tools and resources to have a successful and fulfilling career. And what that does is it leaves a model and legacy for positive growth. So when you look at this from the organizational level, when people think about work, if you were actually to look up the definition of work in the dictionary, it's defined using terms like drudgery. Does that really make you excited about work? I don't
No, it
think it
doesn't.
makes too many people excited about work. But work can be one of the most fulfilling experiences that you have in your life. If you are aligned from a skills and competency standpoint, and depending on how you utilize the work that you do, can it be of benefit to others? And so that's the alignment that I'm trying to create. It's not just about collecting a paycheck so you can consume, new products and items and things of that nature. What difference are you making? And I think it's that difference that is in alignment with the most highly altruistic ideals of society today. And it's also commensurate with the values and characteristics of the younger generations that are entering the workforce today, the millennials and the Gen Zs. They're more socially aware and consciously and socially aware than any other generation prior in history. And I think we need to tap into that social awareness to align them to opportunities that capitalize on their strengths, as well as give them an opportunity to make a difference for others. Looking at the individual perspective, I mentioned that I work with individuals and organizations. Those individuals that come to me are, typically the 40 to 60 something who say, Ryan, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I was told to go in this direction, but I realized after going in that direction for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, that's not really in alignment with who I am. That I want more fulfillment. I want to make a difference. So being able to unearth and sweep off and identify what are those skills, what are those competencies, what are those passions that each individual has, and how can we align that to roles and opportunities to serve organizations that are also in alignment with the ideals and values of the individual. When we can create that kind of connection, that's where that real synergy takes place. We multiply the impact that we can have on the world around us.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, as you were saying that, I was really thinking about some of the key points you were saying as far as the millennials coming in already being conscious and having that kind of, I want to make a difference in them. And I know that coming from the Generation X, I didn't begin to start thinking that way until I got in my 40s.
Yeah.
And then, and I began to look at, going by Carl Jung talks about his 4 archetypes, from athlete to warrior to statesman. And then statesman, when you begin to see things as, I want to make a difference, and then get beyond just your thoughts and your own individual agenda. But as you said, millennials come in with that mindset, which I think is important. And I think it's critical that you have the mindset and begin to think about how to begin to communicate with millennials coming in. And also forgive me for saying HR revolution instead of HR evolution. So thank you for that correction as well.
Certainly. No problem.
Now, my next question is, please describe some of the proactive learning and cultural transformational experiences that you've created within your.
Sure. Sure. So, one experience comes to mind. About 17 years ago, I went into an organization. I was hired as the HR director. And my very first day on the job, I asked for a copy of my job description. He said, "Brian, you don't have one." I said, "What? You just told the HR director that you guys don't have job descriptions?" I knew at that moment the work was cut out for me. So very quickly I got to work, and I identified within about 3 to 4 weeks all the different strategic initiatives that needed to take place from the human resources perspective that would serve the vision and mission of the organization. And it was a public sector entity, and I had come from the private industry and had a lot of different perspectives based on the private industry that I knew could benefit this public sector agency. So I started to roll out a strategic plan to build out the human resources office and align that to the overall mission and vision of the organization. And so I established job descriptions for all 220 employees across the organization. I revamped the performance evaluation system to actually evaluate performance, to actually promote engagement and performance, and to hold employees accountable. Up to that point, what they had was a highly subjective evaluative system that was, in my opinion, no more valuable than a smiley or frowny face on a piece of paper. It really did not provide what the employees needed in terms of the coaching, the development, as well as the accountability to certain objectives and goals that they were to accomplish through their job function. That led me to go on and create what I called the Continuous Learning Committee, or the CLC as we referred to it. The Continuous Learning Committee was designed to address the gaps in terms of skill and competency development across the organization. They had an entity that provided training for employees of the county, of the public sector in which I was working. But many of those were very generic in nature, and they didn't really address the specific needs of the agency from a skills and competency standpoint. So that's where I saw the opportunity to fill that gap and close that gap through the Continuous Learning Committee. And what I did was I invited a cross-section of experts throughout the organization. And when I say a cross-section of experts, they were individuals who represented each division, program, and unit across the organization, but they had specific subject matter expertise within their roles, and invited them to be on the board of the Continuous Learning Committee. And the purpose of that was to have a well-rounded perspective of addressing the needs and gaps of performance across the organization. And what we did is we leveraged all of those individuals to understand how to put together instructional design and facilitation that would support the growth and development of all the employees across the organization. And what that ultimately did was provide a further level of engagement for those experts within our organization to start to give back, to say, okay, yes, you've accumulated this amount of experience and expertise. Now, that's wonderful. How can we multiply that? Well, we multiplied it through leveraging it through the Continuous Learning Committee and offering training and development opportunities across the entire organization that were specifically designed for individuals that had specific roles within the organization. So that had a huge impact on the culture of the organization, to see that our experts were being engaged. Our employees it started to experience a rise in engagement as a result of seeing these growth opportunities available to them. And they could see that it wasn't just a job, that these were opportunities to continue to grow and have a full career within the organization. You know, that affected attraction to the organization, that affected engagement in the organization, and it definitely impacted retention within the organization, because they could see that we were doing things that were in benefit of the individuals, knowing ultimately that if we support the individual in their growth, that's ultimately going to support the organization in its growth. So I would refer to that as one experience that I've had that really was proactive in terms of development of the culture of the organization.
Was there any pushback from
You bet.
bringing that kind of a cultural shift into the organization at all?
Absolutely. You know, this was something new and different. And, you know, we all like our comfort zones. It's called a comfort zone for a reason. We're comfortable there. And anything outside of that might make us a little bit uncomfortable. And so I definitely experienced some of that. What I did was I targeted the leadership of the organization to understand the need first. And once I was able to get the buy-in of the leadership of the organization, that enabled me to carry forward this messaging with their blessing, with their buy-in, with their involvement. And I think that's pivotal and very important for anybody who's trying to initiate any kind of new activity like this, is get executive level buy-in. That's where you need to first start. And once they started to see that, hey, yeah, we do have some trouble with attraction and retention of talent. We do have some trouble with quality and performance. Are these things that you're proposing, Ryan, going to be able to really develop those areas? And so I said, well, let's test it. Let's just do a pilot and see how this works. And so the first year, it was an entire pilot program that included a needs assessment across the organization that validated my concerns and suspicions around performance, around retention, around culture and engagement. And once they could see that, hey, you know, Ryan has a really methodical kind of approach to this that really demonstrates the concerns that we've all kind of intuitively recognized and felt and experienced, let's see what he can do with this. And so still to this day, that Continuous Learning Committee is in action and exhibited across the organization 17 years later.
Wow. Wow. I like your process, you know, as a system engineer and as a person who thinks logical and understands the importance of having a process. I like the way you begin to lay out your assessments, which I think are key and critical first, to kind of get the understanding of how everything is going, how people's thought processes, and what kind of current systems are in place, and then your quantitative way you measured your success. So definitely thank you for sharing a story. Now, one of the things that I focus on doing in my particular area of the business is really building relationships and building connections to individuals. And I have a specific formula and a methodology for building connections and establishing relationships that I've learned through the process of my years of being in business. So my question for you is, what are some of the key characteristics that you look for when establishing a new connection, whether it's someone that you are interested in connecting with, or someone interested in connecting with you? And is that
What a great
process any different?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's evident that the person must be transparent and authentic. I don't want to speak to someone who is just putting on a message that I want to hear. I want to understand what's most important to them. And I think that that involves a level of integrity, a
Mm,
level of authenticity, a level of humility as well. I just don't show me all the good things. I want to see the dark things, the things that you only whisper about, because that truly helps me understand you and what your needs are, so that I can best be of support to that, and connect on that level as well. I think that social media is one of those kind of environments where I think you get to see the best of a person. They only put out the good information, and you look at social media and you kind of think that, oh, everybody's got it all together. They've got it all figured out. Well, those are the same people that are struggling behind the scenes. And I think that that's important to say, okay, let's be authentic. Let's be transparent. Let's, show you who we are and what some of our challenges and concerns are, because I think that many of us have similar challenges. And so if we can identify on that level, and connect on that level, then we can start to meet each other there and grow and develop as a result of that. I think I'm also looking to connect with people that have a compassion for others and a desire to contribute to the success of others as well, that they recognize that it's not all about them.
yes.
Really, it's all about other people, to be honest with you. And so I'm looking for people who are not egotistical, who are not just only interested in what benefits them from a narcissistic standpoint, but someone who's empathetic, conscious, aware, compassionate, and looking to continuously grow. And it's those people that are aligned with that continuous growth that I find myself having that affinity for and an immediate connection with.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Now, my next question is going to shift a little bit because I want to talk about there's a lot of conscious business groups out there that use the term conscious, whether they have a conscious in their title, but they're socially conscious, socially responsible, whether they're benefit corporations, triple bottom liners. So my question would be, how do you see that movement of these socially conscious businesses to be aligned now with social impact investor capital that's out there? How do you see those two connecting, or do you see those connecting in your
I think what's
experience?
really important right up front is we need a clear definition of the end goal. And what does that end look like? We can talk about philosophy, and I enjoy philosophical conversations as much as the next guy. And actually, I think psychology is a component of that philosophy that we have to engage in as well. So I can pontificate with the best of them in terms of what we should be doing. But I think what we ultimately need to do is have some concrete perspectives on what we're trying to accomplish. Have it clearly articulated. What does the end goal look like? And with that end goal, what are the guideposts to ensure that the actions that we take are in the interest of all stakeholders, not just the stockholders? And I
Mhm.
think that's where business has really fallen down in terms of our approach. It's not the what necessarily, it's the how and how we get where we want to go. Yes, we need to have a big, glorious vision of what we want to achieve in the future, but how we obtain that is critically important to the integrity of all that are involved in that process. If it's going to be done on the backs of people with no validation and accreditation and support of them, and it only benefits a small minority, then what are we doing this for? Is that really in the best interest of the business as well as the community and the society at large? I don't think so. I think long term, that's diminutive of those people that are involved. So what's important to me is to have a clear depiction of what our end goals are, and then make sure that we have appropriate guideposts to ensure that the how, in terms of the action that we take to meet that vision, is really in alignment with the overall stakeholders that are involved in that process.
Excellent, excellent. Now, who would be a great connection for you?
What a good question. As I mentioned, I work with individuals and organizations. And so those organizations and individuals who are really looking to thrive, who said, this isn't enough. I'm not satisfied. I'm not fulfilled. I know that there is a better way, that it just doesn't have to be this way anymore. And those are the kinds of organizations and individuals who would be a great connection for me. Organizations that recognize, there must be a better way, and it also starts with leadership. Those are great connections for me. I'm a firm believer that people don't typically quit jobs, they quit bosses. And I think that you can track every success as well as every failure in the organization back to leadership. And that's why I don't mess around with the things that are outside of that sphere. I go right directly to the challenges and problems and successes within an organization, and I work with leaders across those organizations to develop their skills, to make sure that they're competent and successful, to be able to support those that are around them. To that point, Kim, we have an epidemic in this country, and it has nothing to do with viruses. It's an epidemic of promoting people into leadership roles, but then not supporting them with the skills and competencies to be successful in those roles. It makes no sense to me. And it's, a self-fulfilling prophecy of defeat. That why would we promote individual contributors who are rock stars as individual contributors, but then make them stewards of other people when they've never been trained and developed to be stewards of other people in a leadership capacity? Those people that recognize that gap and that issue and that challenge, those are the organizations.
We seem to have lost Ryan here for a second, so we're going to work to get this issue worked out. So bear with us for a moment. I'm sure he'll be joining back in a second.
I'm back.
Okay. I was just saying you'll be back. Okay. Well, I'm sorry. You were right there at talking about.
I was just wrapping up the message of saying the organizations who really recognize that there are gaps in terms of how we're operating and how best to operate in terms of supporting leaders to be successful as leaders. Those are the organizations that I want to work with. As far as individuals that are not satisfied in their career, who are not aligned from a skills, competencies, and desire and passion standpoint, as I said before, work doesn't have to be the drudgery it's defined to be in the dictionary. It can be one of the most fulfilling experiences that you have in your life. And so I want to be able to make sure that people are satisfied, successful, and fulfilled. And I can do that through professional career branding and career coaching.
I love that. I love when I talk to conscious leaders and their goals are to make people fulfilled and satisfied, and find meaning in work. That's a constant theme I constantly keep hearing it. And that's why I love being involved in the conscious movement and the work that I do. And now that kind of shifts my next question for you is, of all the things you accomplished in your life, what would you say has been the most rewarding to you?
I have to go back to my family. I know that that's not anything that we talked about up to this point. We've really kind of relegated our conversation to the professional aspect of myself. But I think it all starts with my family. If I don't have a good foundation at home, then I can't be of good service to other people. And I have a saint of a wife that puts up with me on a daily basis. I have two teenage boys. One's 18 and one's 14. The 18-year-old's getting ready to go off to college. 14-year-old is a handful and always involved in sports and athletics and all kinds of things. And I'm blessed to have that family to really support me and to enable me to do the things that I do. When I left the corporate world to launch my own consulting business, that's something that's pretty anxiety inducing for a family because there's a lot of unknowns associated with that. But they gave me the full support that I needed to be successful today.
Excellent. That's an excellent answer as well. It just shows you how you are not just so focused on your career and your business that you don't see the value of how your family plays into your complete self.
Indeed.
My next question, still as it relates to you and getting my listening audience to understand who you are as an individual. of all the passions that you have, which one would you say brings you the most fulfillment?
Teaching.
Ah,
Teaching. I have taught not only in the corporate environment as a corporate trainer, but I've had the honor and pleasure of teaching at the university level, teaching both graduate as well as undergraduate courses. And ultimately, that's what I feel like I am in the most aligned with the flow state, if you know what I mean. That
yes.
flow state where there is no time, you're just, in your groove, and you're just operating at a higher level. And I see that as teaching for me.
Excellent, excellent. Now, one of the questions I'm kind of adding to my podcast list is, and I think it speaks to the mindset of the conscious leader, and that is, what book, if you had to recommend, I know there's a lot of books that you would probably love and prefer, but what book, if you had to recommend one book, as to say, this book you can associate with me because it speaks to my values, or it speaks to my ideology, it speaks to
Mm.
how I feel. What book would that be that you would recommend?
Wow. What a great question. It would be very difficult for me to relegate it to one book.
Hmm.
I'm looking over here at my bookshelf right now as I talk to you, and there's several up here that definitely demonstrate who I am and my perspective and what I bring to the world and what aligns with my values. We have Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth that
Hmm.
really talks about spiritual development and growth of the individual and our expanding our own consciousness and perspective of the world around us. Another popular book by Eckhart Tolle is The Power of Now. But I'm also looking at, there's a great book by Hurt and Dye, Karen Hurt and David Dye, called Courageous Cultures. And I think it really speaks to my notion of human resource management and what could be in terms of how we operate our businesses and organizations. Right below that, I'm looking at another book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. It's one of his recent books.
Hmm.
You may recognize him as the author of Getting to Why.
Yes.
The Infinite Game really talks about a philosophy of business that is not predicated on the quarter to quarter, business earnings and stockholder earnings that are so common in the corporate world. But what are we really trying to create as a result of this business? And know that sometimes, we are planting seeds for trees that we will not experience the shade from, that this is an infinite game and we continue to stack on top of one another. And we have the benefit of being where we are today because of others who had come before us that have really exhibited this idea of continuously growing, building, creating these legacies from which our ancestors, our children and our children's children can continue to build upon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as we get kind of near the top of the hour, one of the key questions I love to ask is, what would be a king connection for you? And what I mean by a king connection, I'm not just referring to my company or my name, but I define a king connection as an individual who, um, based on their level of social capital, financial capital, influence, um, if they were to add you to their inner circle, it could change your life, change your business exponentially. Like, for example, a king connection for me would be Magic Johnson. If I can get connected with him, with his resources, with his knowledge, with his experience, and just have a conversation with him, I believe that I'll get tremendous value. And
Hmm.
so, my question for you would be, who would that be for you? And it could be in business, it could be in life, it could be whoever that person is that you define as your king connection.
I just mentioned the author, Simon Sinek. I think that the more I hear from Simon Sinek, the more I see that what he espouses in terms of his business perspective is very much in alignment with my values and interests as well. So I think Simon Sinek would be an incredible person to speak with and have be a connection of mine. Um, he seems to really have things kind of figured out in terms of a methodical approach to help people expand and grow and continuously have a positive impact on the world around them. I think he would be an outstanding connection.
Great. And then my final question would be, what thoughts would you want to leave with our listening audience? Any closing thoughts? And you can also share your contact information, how folks can get in contact with you, and how you might want to engage with anybody who resonates with your message today.
Well, I think the message I really want to leave with folks today is, that intuitive gut feeling that you all have, I know because I've been there, is there must be a better way. There is a better way. And we have to pause for the cause, to step back and say, why are we doing things the way that we're doing them? If they are not supportive of the individuals, if they're not supportive of the organization. A two-way relationship between the employer and the employee needs to exist. No longer are we coherent with the ideology that we go and work and work and work and work, and we only get a paycheck out of it. I think people are looking for more out of their lives. And until organizations recognize that work is only one aspect of our life, it is not all of our life. It was very much a part of the baby boomer ideology, who still run many of our organizations today, that they live to work. Right. Well, it's very much a part of the ideology of Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z, is they work to live. And right. So we need to have a much more well-rounded understanding and perspective around business. And I think that calls upon us to do things in a very different way. It is much more in alignment of who we are as a society, as a community, as individuals, and living in concert with nature and what is best for the society at large. I don't say that I have the greatest concept of what is best for society. I know what's best for me. And I think that most individuals have a sense of what's best for them as well. We have gone far aflung from that in terms of how we treat our employees, in terms of how we lead organizations. And I think that this, the golden opportunity for us to reimagine how we work. I don't talk to too many people who say, I want to go back to the way things were, because the way things weren't that great. But right. What they do want to do is move forward in a more positive direction, something that is more in alignment with who they are as an individual. It's not just about the aggrandizement of the organization and the leaders within the organization, but how can we all rise as a result of that? So that's what I'm interested in doing. The individuals who are aligned with that message, as well as the organizations who are aligned with those messages. Those are the people that I want to connect with. Those are the people that I want to have more conversations with, to unearth and understand what are their greatest needs, and is there an opportunity for me to be able to support those needs.
Excellent. And please share any contact information that you would like.
Yeah, sure. So my website is www.hrevolutionllc.com. And if you would like to email me and have a conversation about what your needs are, you can do so at rmcshane, and that's from Ryan McShane, rmcshane, rmcshane at hrevolutionllc.com.
Well, thank you, Ryan, again for your investment of time, passion. I've enjoyed the conversation. One of the things I always like to extract from each discussion is one sentence that I believe I can take and go further. And it's one that you said I think is very profound. It's very simple. You said, people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Yes.
And I think if people really, truly understand what they really meant, they can begin to seek to say, what can I do to make sure people don't quit me? And within that deep introspective analysis may be a reason why they might want to reach out to HR Evolution.
Yep. Thank you.
And thank you for your time. You have a blessed day, and I look forward to continue to build with you in the future.
You do the same, King. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you today.
Thank you.